Let's now talk about works cited and bibliography page formatting. The first question we need to answer as we approach this is, what's the difference between a works cited page and a bibliography page? Well, basically, a works cited page is a list of works that you have cited or referred to in your essay. A bibliography page is a list of any works you have consulted in your research project. It may even be a list of works on a given topic. A bibliography page does not only include things that you refer to in your essay. For most of your writing in our classes, you will only be required to turn in a works cited page. And so I only want to know the works that you have actually used in your research, works that you have referred to, works that you have gotten ideas from in your research. Properly speaking, a works cited page is a specific kind of bibliography page. A bibliography page is a list of works on a topic. A works cited page is a list of works on a topic that you have actually referred to, meaning the works you have actually referred to in your paper. This is an important distinction, one that you will see the importance of more and more as you do more academic work on higher levels. After the last paragraph of your essay text, you need to insert a page break. This puts the works cited page on a separate page, and it keeps it from working its way back onto the same page as your last paragraph of text if your essay were to get shorter or longer as you go through the editing process. Inserting that page break is a critical part of formatting a works cited page properly. You then need to center the heading Works Cited at the top of the page. Do not italicize, bold, or underline this title. This is simply the title of the page. Similar to the title of your essay, it is simply the text capitalized in standard capitalization. The first line of each entry on your works cited page must be flush with the left side of the page, but every subsequent line of each entry needs to be indented 1/2 inch. This is important because it makes it easier for the reader as they are scanning down the page to see the last names of the author. The last names of the author will jut out that 1/2 inch more beyond the rest of the text of the entry and will make it easier for the reader to find the author name or the title that they are looking for when they try to cross-reference the citations, the parenthetical citations in the text with the works cited page. The entries on a works cited page must be arranged in alphabetical order. Usually the arrangement does not include parts of the titles that are articles, so the, an, or a are not included in the alphabetization. So you want to keep that in mind. They must be in alphabetical order. You will typically merge the works that have the last name of the author and also the works that have just the title of the work because there is no author known. Those will be alphabetized together, thus making it easier for the reader to find the work that they are looking for. Everything on the works cited page must be double-spaced. This is the same as what we've said before. Everything is always, only ever, double-spaced in MLA. Now let's talk about each of the entries. This little chart will be of immense value to you as you attempt to create works cited entries. I realize that you can use websites such as CiteMe or BibMe or Citation Machine and all of these other sites to try to generate these automatically, but they are unreliable. It is imperative that you learn how to cite works by hand on your own. And this chart will help you do that carefully. Look at the chart. There's 9 different items that are listed here. Not every work will have each of these items, but this essentially tells you what the different things are that you need. Almost everything in this almost every item in this is separated by a comma. But it's important to notice that there are 3 major citations, and each of those major citations are ended by a period. The first major element is the author. The second major element is the title of the source. The next major element, or next major category or section of the works cited page is called the publication information. All of the publication information goes together in that final section, which is then ended by a period. So keep in mind that almost everything, because there's many more categories, only 1 and 2 end with a period, everything else ends with a comma. There are a few cases where you may use a period when you have a journal, for example, that has a issue number and a volume number. You'll separate those by a period, but that's a highly specialized instance. In most cases, you will only have 3 periods in every works cited or bibliographic entry. The text here tells you each entry in the list of works cited is made up of core elements given in a specific order. The core elements should be listed in the order in which they appear here. Each element is followed by the punctuation here. Each element is followed by the punctuation mark shown here. I'm now going to go down this chart and just talk about each item on its own briefly. The author is self-explanatory. The author is listed first name. First name comes after last name. So last name comes first. You'll have a comma and then first name. If you have multiple authors, you will separate them by a comma, and the second and subsequent names will be in their normal order. Only the first name, which is either the alphabetically first name or the most important of the authors, will be listed first. If you have an author and an editor, you can look up on the website how to do that, but it will simply be the author, and then depending on if it's the editor of the single volume or multi-volume work, if it's an editor of parts of it or all of the work, the editor will be placed at slightly different locations. The title of the source is the next item here, and it will be noted clearly just as the title appears in the work or on the work. This title will be italicized if it is a book title, or it will be placed in quotation marks if it is a smaller work. You will then have the title of the container. This is an incredibly important category. So if you are quoting a web page, for example, a web page is part of a larger website, right? So an article on CNN's web page, or on CNN's website, the article is called a web page. The entire CNN website is called a website. The website will be the container. The web page is the specific thing that you looked at. So you'll have the title of the source, which is the web page, and that will be in quotation marks. And then you will have the title of the container, which is the website, and that will be in italics. You will then have the names of other contributors, which may or may not be relevant, just depending the version of the work, the number of it, publisher, publication date, and the location. This is all information. We'll look at some examples, but you can go to the Purdue OWL website and you can see examples of almost every imaginable type of work listed there, or you can also consult the MLA handbook, and it will also have many, many examples. We can look at a few here. So you begin every entry with the author's last name followed by a comma and the rest of the name as presented in the work. End this element with a period. And so you see here, Naomi S. Barron becomes Barron, comma, Naomi S. period. Right. So that makes sense. And then you have the title of the work that you're quoting. Then you have the container of the work, which is PMLA, which is a journal. And you have the volume number and the version number, the issue number within that volume. You have the date, and then you have the exact location in that journal, which is pages 193 to 200. Notice the dash indicating from this point to this point. You need to be careful on this that you use an N dash, not a hyphen, and not an M dash. Those three marks of punctuation are different and should not be confused. A hyphen is not an N dash, an N dash is not an M dash. Please review the proper use of those. Basically, you have hyphens which bring together words that are used as one word. You have dashes, which M dashes, which is a longer dash, which is used to emphasize an element in your writing, to set it apart with emphasis. And then you have N dashes, which are a dash that are slightly shorter than an M dash, but longer than the hyphen, and those indicate the idea of from this point to this point. Okay. And so you want to be careful that you understand that. Your N dash is typically as long as your or as wide as your lowercase n. Your M dash is as wide as your lowercase m. So they're called N dash and M dash from what I've been told. So that's an example there of some things. Also notice that when you are citing multiple pages, you do not put PGS or anything like that, or PS period. You put PP. That's what indicates that this is multiple pages. One P followed by another indicates you're covering multiple pages. If you just use a single P followed by a period, you're talking about a single page. Notice the next example. This is by Alan Jacobs, but Jacobs is a last name with a comma, Alan period. The Pleasures of Reading in an Age of Distraction. It's a great book, period. And you have Oxford University Press, comma, 2001. So this is the easiest kind of citation where you're just citing a normal book, and if everything you cite are books, your works cited page will be much, much easier to put together. Then you have some other examples here. You have the example of books and websites. Remember that the title of the source needs to be in italics. And so here, your one source, so many books, is in italics because it is the title of a website. And then Modernism, Feminism, and Jewishness is the title of a book, and that is in italics as well. And you have journals, magazines, newspapers, television episodes, and songs. These are placed in quotation marks. Well, the title of the smaller work is placed in quotation marks, whereas the title of the container is placed in italics typically. And so here, with this journal article, the question of transport, reading questions of transport, reading Primo Levi, reading Dante, right? So that's the title of the article. The title of the journal that's published in is the Georgia Review, and the container, the title of the journal it's contained in, is placed in italics, whereas the actual article is placed in quotation marks. So the Bible, this is an interesting one, and one again that you should use frequently. Italicize the Bible and follow it with the version you are using. So this is telling you the citation, what it looks like. Remember that your in-text parenthetical citations should include the name of the specific edition of the Bible, followed by an abbreviation of the book, then the chapter and verses. You can go back and look at what I talked about with citing the Bible in text citations. But here, just as an example, the Bible, period, Authorized King James Version, comma, Oxford University Press, 1998 would be correct for that one. And this is what your citations should generally look like. If the version includes the name, the wording Bible, then you don't need to have the Bible separated off. So the New Jerusalem Bible, edited by Susan Jones, Doubleday, just a publisher, 1985, period. So another example of that. Somehow in the process of making this PowerPoint for recording, the italics disappeared here, but the Bible should be italicized. And you can also italicize Authorized King James Version or the New Jerusalem Bible. So you want to italicize all that refers to the title there, and then move on from that. There are some things that I just want to talk about in general. These are the location in particular is something we have to talk about. I want your location to be as specific as possible, right? So including the pages of the journal that cover the article that you're referring to, or the pages of the newspaper, the pages of the magazine where the article is located, please include those. That is important. Also, I'm going to ask that you always include a URL. So the web address, the specific web address for any article, any online source that you use. I want to be able to click on that and see the exact source that you are citing. So please, on everything you turn in, I know that some MLA guidelines are going to say that the URL is optional. It is not optional. If you're turning a work in for me, I have to have the URL so that I can follow that and see exactly what you saw as you cited this information. There's a couple of things that are called optional elements in MLA. The one is the date of the original publication. So if you're quoting a work that was published years ago, including, like here, 1782, which is when this work was originally published. Obviously, it was republished in 1992. So that's helpful to know that it was republished 210 years after the original publication. That's good. If you can include that, I'd encourage you to include that. Including the city of publication, this is helpful, particularly if you're working with older works. With many older works, there were not names for the publishing houses. Instead, the publishing house was actually the city in which it was published. And that's the only information you'll have. So on older works, often including the city, the place of publication becomes really important because that functions instead of a publisher or a publisher's name. The DOIs, which is Digital Object Identifiers, if your resource has this, I'd encourage you to include it. The date access, this is not really optional. If you need to include it, you have to include it. But it's not ideal. Typically, you would include the date accessed if you don't have a date when the source was actually published, right? So if you have no way of knowing when the source was put online, like in the example here of this episode of this particular TV series, if you don't know the date that it was published, then you must include the date that you witnessed it, that you saw it, or that you referenced it. And so the date they've included here, they have the word accessed, July 23rd, only it's 23 July 2013. Keep in mind here that the way that you write a date is the day of the month, and the abbreviation for the month must be standard to MLA format. Again, you can look that up on the MLA website as to exactly how to abbreviate the different names of the months and then the year. So the date accessed is used when you do not have a date for when the work was actually put on the website. In this specific example, because you do have a date when it was published, you would not need to include the date accessed. And so that's why I had it here under the optional elements. But if you did not have a date when it was published, you would need to include the date when you accessed it. That would no longer be optional. If you have a publication date, then the date accessed is optional, and I don't see any point in including it. But if you do not have a date of publication or a date when it was put online, then you need to have a date when you accessed it. That brings us to the end of our presentation. I'll again tell you that you can go to our website, which has an incredible amount of information. A lot of this PowerPoint is taken from that website just to help you see in a short form some of these ideas. Thank you, and I hope this has been helpful to you.